The sun was sinking low behind the distant hills, casting long amber streaks across the dusty plains. The wind carried the scent of wild sage and the fading whispers of another day. Inside a small wooden cabin on the edge of town, a young woman named Clara stood by the kitchen window, her hands deep in a bowl of dough. Her hair, loose and glowing in the late sunlight, framed a face both tender and tired. She had been alone for months now, ever since her father passed and the small family ranch fell into her care. The world outside seemed to move on without her, but within those four creaking walls, time stood still. As her hands worked the dough, she began to hum a soft tune, one her mother used to sing when life was still full of laughter. The melody floated through the open window and drifted into the dusty evening air, carried across the yard, over the fence, and down the road where a lone cowboy rode by. His name was Ethan Cole, a man known across the county for his quiet strength, his weathered hat, and the way he never stayed long in one place. He'd been riding since dawn, looking for work, or maybe just a reason to keep moving. But when he heard that humming, he pulled the reins and stopped. Something about that sound. It wasn't just music. It was the sound of life, of warmth, of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Ethan dismounted slowly, his boots crunching on the dry earth. He approached the cabin, careful not to startle whoever was inside. Through the window, he saw her, this young woman with flour-dusted hands and eyes full of distant dreams. For a moment, he forgot the road behind him and the loneliness that had become his companion. The tune she hummed pulled him closer, like a magnet tugging at a heart he thought was long gone. He cleared his throat softly, knocking on the wooden frame. "Evening, ma'am," he said with that low, steady voice of his. Clara startled, turning toward the door. "Oh, I didn't hear you ride up," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I didn't mean to intrude," Ethan said, tipping his hat. "I was just passing by when I heard someone singing. Sounded like Hope." Clara smiled faintly, though her eyes shimmered with curiosity. "Hope?" she repeated. "Don't get many people call my voice that." Ethan stepped inside, the golden light of sunset spilling behind him. "Well, maybe they haven't been listening right," he said, leaning lightly against the doorway. The air between them thickened with a quiet warmth neither of them could explain. She offered him water and a seat, and he accepted. For the first time in a long while, Clara had someone to talk to. She told him about her father, about the long nights alone, about how singing helped her forget the silence. Ethan listened, really listened, like every word mattered. He told her about the open trail, about towns that came and went, about the kind of loneliness that didn't end at sundown. There was a connection there, raw and unspoken. Two souls that recognized the ache in each other's hearts. As the bread baked in the oven, the smell filled the little cabin, wrapping them both in a sense of home neither had known for years. The flicker of the oil lamp danced across their faces as night fell outside. Clara laughed softly at one of Ethan's quiet stories, and for the first time since her father's death, her laughter didn't sound broken. Ethan found himself watching her hands as she sliced the bread, strong, steady hands that had built a life from nothing. He realized he'd never known what he was searching for until that moment. "You ever think about leaving this place?" Ethan asked after a long pause. Clara shook her head. "This land's all I have left. My father built it, and my mother's songs still live in its walls. I can't leave it." Ethan nodded, understanding. "Sometimes staying takes more courage than riding away." She looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw something he hadn't seen in years, a quiet, unyielding strength. The night grew colder, and he offered to fix the loose shutter outside. Clara watched through the window as he worked, the moonlight glinting off his buckle, his hands sure and practiced. When he came back in, the bread was ready. She tore it in half and handed him a piece, their fingers brushing for a moment that lingered longer than either expected. They ate in silence for a while, until Clara began humming again. This time Ethan joined in, his deep voice blending with hers in a rough, tender harmony that filled the cabin. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it made the night feel alive. "You sing too?" she asked, smiling. He shrugged. Ain't had reason to in a long time, he replied. Guess I found one tonight. Outside, the wind howled gently through the fields, but inside that little wooden home, there was peace. When the clock struck midnight, Ethan stood, hat in hand. I should be going, he said softly. Clara looked up, her heart sinking just a bit. Thank you for stopping by, she said. He nodded. Ma'am, I think I should be thanking you for reminding me what it feels like to stop running. He stepped out into the night, his horse waiting patiently by the fence. But as he looked back at the cabin, he heard her humming again, and this time he knew he wasn't going far. Some roads didn't lead away, some led home. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan came back often, sometimes with supplies, sometimes just to hear her sing. Slowly, what began as a simple melody grew into something neither of them could ignore, a bond that healed, a love that grew in the quiet rhythm of shared mornings and song-filled evenings. And as Clara kneaded dough once again one golden afternoon, she looked up to see Ethan standing by the door.